"Ma'am, you need to leave right now. This bank doesn't serve customers like you." The guard stepped toward his radio. Dr. Olivia Bennett stood perfectly still, her gaze calm and unwavering, one hand gripping the designer leather briefcase monogrammed with her initials. The large clock on the wall had just struck 2 p.m. A seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon at Prestige National Bank's flagship branch in downtown Chicago. The polished marble beneath Olivia's feet gleamed, reflecting the glittering light from the massive crystal chandeliers overhead, underscoring both the opulence and the chill of the place. Olivia pushed through the towering glass doors, confidence radiating from each deliberate step. She wore a tailored charcoal gray suit that hugged her silhouette, and as she approached the premium banking counter, she exuded quiet authority. The young teller, Jessica, looked up, her expression instantly sour, suspicion flickering in her eyes. "Sorry, the standard customer line is over there," Jessica said coolly, nodding toward the regular teller stations. "I need to use the premium banking services," Olivia replied softly but firmly. Jessica's brow rose. "Do you have an appointment?" Encounters like this happen more often than people realize, and this was just the beginning of a chain of events no one could have foreseen. At precisely 2 p.m., the gentle afternoon light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm, golden glow across the grand lobby of Prestige National. This Chicago branch was renowned for its elaborate crystal chandeliers and high-polish marble floors, symbols of a financial institution with over half a century of storied prestige. Amid this splendor, Dr. Olivia Bennett, the woman at the helm as CEO, walked in looking flawless down to the smallest detail. Olivia, a black woman of poise and undeniable presence, wore a bespoke black suit accented by a silk scarf and a tan designer handbag. Her heels clicked with resolute purpose on the cold stone, each step echoing her authority. Unbeknownst to her, within minutes this very bank would become the battleground for a hard-fought struggle for justice. She strode straight to the VIP service area, the domain of select clients, senior executives, and board members. But before she could even address the teller, Jessica, a young woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a meticulously made-up face, looked her up and down with barely concealed doubt. "Excuse me, that area's for regular customers. You'll need to go over there," Jessica said, pointing toward the basic teller line. An uneasy hush fell over the lobby. A few seated clients glanced up, their curiosity tinged with unease. Olivia paused for a moment, her eyes steady and deep, as if assessing the situation before her. Without a hint of anger or haste, she replied in a calm, unwavering voice, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I require premium services." Jessica frowned, briefly disoriented before her impatience took over. Her tone hardened. "Ma'am, we have strict policy. No appointment or verification, no VIP service. Please move to the standard line." Her words rang loudly in the otherwise silent bank, drawing more attention from customers and staff alike. Several people turned to scrutinize Olivia, their faces registering doubt or surprise. Olivia felt the invisible pressure build. This wasn't the first time she'd faced such treatment, but it was the first time it happened in the place she led. Rather than losing her temper, she gave a slight, resolute smile. She inhaled deeply, straightened her posture, and let her confidence shine through. At that moment, a tall man in a gray suit emerged from behind the counter. Bradley Mitchell, the assistant manager who prided himself on handling difficult customers, appeared with a scowl. He met Olivia's gaze with a challenge in his eyes, intensifying the tension. "What's going on here, Jessica?" Bradley asked, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Olivia's heart fluttered, not with fear, but with the sense that something significant was about to unfold. She braced herself for the challenge ahead, knowing this moment would test not just her, but the bank's reputation and the broader cause of social justice. She understood instinctively. Destiny had arrived. Less than 5 minutes after her arrival, Bradley Mitchell had turned the initial vague tension into a public, insulting interrogation. His displeased scowl was obvious, and his cold, prejudiced gaze swept over Olivia as though he were inspecting a defective product. Folding his arms and leaning back slightly, fully asserting his dominance, he began to question her in a tone dripping with contempt. "Ma'am, could you please explain exactly why you're requesting our premium services?" Bradley boomed, making no effort to hide his suspicion. He deliberately stressed the words premium services, as if Olivia could never belong in that world. Olivia paused for a moment, her calm yet piercing eyes fixed on him. She recognized this for what it was, not a simple misunderstanding, but a display of deep-seated bias. In a steady, authoritative voice she replied, "I am fully entitled to access these exclusive services, Mr. Mitchell. I don't think further verification is necessary." Bradley remained unmoved by her composed demeanor. If anything, he grew more agitated, stepping closer as though to increase the pressure. His brow furrowed, his doubt deepening as though every word Olivia spoke personally challenged the power he wielded. "Ma'am, Prestige National's premium services are reserved for clients whose assets or income meet very high standards," he announced more loudly, ensuring all nearby customers could hear. "We cannot serve those who don't meet the criteria. I trust you understand." Immediately, the air around them grew heavy. Waiting patrons craned their necks, curiosity and unease mixing on their faces. Some began whispering. Others exchanged uncertain glances, bewildered by the teller's conduct. Olivia felt the injustice keenly, but she held her ground, outwardly calm even as her heart raced. Behind Bradley, Jessica shot Olivia a look, equal parts curious and skeptical. Bradley turned to her, lowering his voice but still audible to Olivia. "Jessica, have you verified this customer's information?" "I need to know exactly who Ms. Bennett is." "No, not yet, but then do it, now!" Bradley snapped, his eyes never leaving Olivia, as though he feared losing control of this peculiar confrontation. "I don't have all day for this." A surge of frustration and indignation washed over Olivia. She understood why Bradley behaved this way. It went beyond procedural doubt to a prejudice ingrained in his subconscious, a belief that she, a black woman, couldn't possibly qualify for Prestige National's top-tier services. Yet she gave no sign of hurt. She stood tall, her gaze unwavering, as if daring him to reveal the bias he cloaked in professionalism. "Mr. Mitchell," she said again, her voice calm but unyielding, "you should reconsider both your tone and your assumptions. You're making unfounded judgments about me." Bradley curled his lip into a smirk, his eyes sharp as though Olivia had struck a nerve. He leaned in another step, his voice provocative. "I'm protecting this bank's interests, and I will continue to do so until I'm absolutely certain you belong here." The tension crescendoed, almost suffocating. A few customers stood, poised to intervene, then hesitated and sat back down, uncertain. Olivia realized the scene was spiraling into a public crisis, something she never imagined happening at the bank she led. Glancing at his watch, Bradley delivered his ultimatum with cold finality. "You have exactly 5 minutes to prove your credentials, or we will ask you to leave immediately." In that moment, Olivia felt a rush of righteous anger, but she maintained her composed exterior. She knew she couldn't let emotion cloud her judgment. Standing up to this prejudice was not just her fight, it was a stand for everyone who'd ever been discriminated against. And now, Olivia resolved, she would not allow this to continue unchecked. Without wasting a second, as if waiting in the wings, Regional Manager Patricia Kane stepped up beside Bradley Mitchell, adding her own steely skepticism to the already thickening atmosphere. Her jet-black hair was pulled into a tight bun, and her cold, piercing eyes held a chill even Bradley dared not ignore. She stood firmly next to him, as if to signal that she fully backed his hardline prejudice stance. Patricia cast a casual, evaluating glance at Olivia before speaking in a steely tone honed by years of banking leadership. "Miss Bennett, we need you to produce clear documentation of your income and identity immediately. This is a standard requirement, especially for Prestige National's premium services." Each word was deliberately chosen to deepen the doubt Bradley had already sown. Olivia could feel every gaze in the lobby like a tiny, cold blade scrutinizing her. Yet she kept her eyes steady and resolute, refusing to show any wavering under the pressure of both challengers. "If you truly qualify for these services," Patricia continued, her face betraying no hint of warmth, "you'll have no issue providing the necessary paperwork. We must verify any client we don't recognize in this area." Patricia's wording carried a veiled reference to Olivia's race and appearance. The other customers were completely riveted by the confrontation. Hushed whispers grew more audible, threading tension through the Grand Bank Hall. Olivia exhaled softly, holding back the anger rising within her. "I'm confident you and Mr. Mitchell can verify my credentials without making this more complicated." Patricia's lips curled into a mocking half-smile. With a subtle nod toward Bradley, she triggered the large screen behind the counters to flicker on, revealing Regional Director Robert Harris's stern, authoritative face. His salt-and-pepper hair and angular features spoke of a man who trusted no one more than himself. "What's going on there, Bradley?" Harris's voice boomed across the lobby, drawing every eye to the screen. Bradley stepped closer to the monitor, deliberately raising his voice so everyone could hear. "Mr. Harris, we have an unidentified client demanding premium services without the required documentation." Harris's gaze swept over Olivia's image for a few seconds, his expression unreadable but deeply skeptical. Then, in a firm, commanding tone, "Ms. Bennett, I'm ordering you to provide your full identity and income verification immediately. If not, for the bank's security and reputation, you will be asked to leave within 5 minutes." Those final words echoed through the cavernous lobby, amplifying the suffocating tension. Olivia felt the weight of 100 judging eyes and rising whispers, as though she were a suspect on display. In that moment, Olivia, pushed to the brink of her patience, locked eyes with the screen. Her voice rang, clear, calm but resolute. "Mr. Harris, are you certain you wish to pursue this course? I believe this decision could have serious repercussions none of us want to witness." For an instant, Olivia's sharp reply seemed to catch Harris off guard, but in the next heartbeat he regained composure and responded with even greater firmness. "My decision stands. You have exactly 5 minutes to comply, or you will be asked to leave immediately. This choice is final." With that, Harris's words rang like a gavel. Bradley and Patricia exchanged self-satisfied, hostile glances. Olivia stood at the eye of the storm, surrounded by prejudice and power, but in her eyes now burned a certainty and determination. She knew she was at the heart of a battle far bigger than herself, and she would not lose. At the very moment the pressure peaked, under all those scrutinizing stares and growing whispers, Sarah Brooks, a young influencer seated in the VIP lobby, quietly pulled out her phone. At first, she'd meant to capture a few clips of an ordinary day at one of the city's most luxurious banks, but she quickly realized this was anything but ordinary. Silently, Sarah switched to Instagram Live. In an instant, her screen lit up with hearts and reaction emojis. First a few dozen, then surging into the hundreds of viewers. Comments poured in faster than she could read them. What's going on? Isn't this Prestige National Bank? Can someone explain? What are they doing to that woman? Keeping her phone steady, Sarah spoke softly into the mic. Hey, everyone. I'm at Prestige National's downtown Chicago branch. There's a serious incident unfolding. This well-dressed black woman seems to be facing blatant discrimination by the bank staff right in front of me. Her whisper was almost inaudible in the lobby, but crystal clear to the thousands watching live. Within minutes, her viewer count topped 2,000. Comments turned to outrage. Unbelievable. This is a renowned bank. What were they thinking treating a customer like that? Someone, please tag them. I want an explanation. Standing next to Bradley, Patricia Kane noticed Sarah filming. Patricia narrowed her eyes and leaned into Bradley, her voice low but urgent. Bradley, it looks like someone's recording us. This could become a huge problem. Bradley glanced at Sarah, panic flickering across his face before he masked it with arrogance. Adjusting his tie, he snapped, Ignore her, Patricia. We can't let anyone see us lose control. Just follow protocol. On the big screen behind the counters, Robert Harris still loomed, expression cold and severe. His gaze swept the lobby like a final warning before he spoke. I'll repeat myself for the last time, Miss Bennett. You have exactly 5 minutes to present your documentation, or guards will be instructed to remove you immediately. Sarah's breath caught as she captured every word. Her eyes widened in shock and anger as her viewership shot past 5,000. The comment feed exploded. This is unacceptable. Who gave them the right? We need to get this video viral. I'm contacting local news. This can't be ignored. Olivia stood her ground, calm on the surface even as her heart raced. She knew every move from here on would impact her career, her reputation, and the future of the bank she led. Locking eyes with Bradley and Patricia, then staring up defiantly at Harris on the screen, she spoke with unwavering resolve. I'll say it once more. You are making a grave mistake. Continuing down this path will have serious consequences, and I assure you, none of us want that. Bradley sneered, as if her words didn't deserve his attention. Checking his watch, he replied with mocking patience. Miss Bennett, instead of empty threats, why don't you use your time wisely and prove your eligibility? At that point, Sarah could no longer stay silent. Her voice rang out, full of emotion, describing the scene to her live audience. Everyone, the bank staff just publicly challenged and insulted a customer. I can't believe this is how Prestige National treats its clients. Please share this everywhere. This needs to be addressed right now. Sarah's plea ignited a wildfire online. Within seconds, shares and comments exploded across social media. The hashtag #sign Prestige National began trending, signaling an impending PR crisis. Meanwhile, Olivia remained at the center of the storm, resolved not to back down. Surrounded by suspicion and mounting pressure, she felt more than ever the responsibility to stand up against this injustice, not just for herself, but for everyone who has ever faced prejudice and discrimination. The moment Bradley finished his smug declaration, he deliberately swept the room with his gaze, savoring his perceived power. The bank lobby was so quiet it felt suffocating. Every tense, watchful eye fixed on Olivia. Patricia stood beside Bradley, her expression cold and confident, as if they'd just won an invisible battle. "I'm sorry, but your time is up," Bradley announced, raising his voice as he began a taunting countdown. 5, 4, 3. Unfazed by his dramatic performance, Olivia calmly placed her sleek black briefcase on the counter. The soft click of its lock opening was barely audible, but in that absolute silence, it resonated, drawing everyone's attention. Sarah Brooks, phone trembling in her hand, moved closer to capture every detail. The live viewer count had climbed past 8,000, and comments were streaming in at lightning speed, all waiting for what would happen next. What's she doing? Why is she opening her briefcase now? Is she really that important? Just as Bradley prepared to reach 1, Olivia slowly pulled a business card and a gleaming metal ID badge from the case and placed them on the counter with deliberate confidence. The light caught the badge, making the bold inscription impossible to miss. Dr. Olivia Bennett, Chief Executive Officer, Prestige National Bank. A stunned silence stretched on. Bradley's face immediately drained of color. His lips quivered in horror. Patricia, too, stood frozen, her earlier confidence gone, replaced by panic. Both looked as though they'd been struck by lightning, unable to believe what they were seeing. "This can't be," Bradley stammered, voice weak. His initial bravado vanished. He tried to steady himself, but his knees were visibly shaking. Olivia met Bradley's gaze, her eyes sharp yet composed, clearly in full control of the situation. She picked up the business card, placed it again in front of him, and spoke with unwavering authority, her voice echoing through the awestruck lobby. "Bradley, I suggest you take a moment to read this card carefully. Then you'll realize your mistake wasn't just unprofessional. It was extremely serious." Her words cut through the room, each syllable imprinting itself on Bradley and Patricia's minds. Sarah, standing nearby, broke into her live stream in a thrilled, breathless whisper. "Everyone, she's the CEO. They just tried to expel the CEO of Prestige National. I've never seen anything this shocking in my life." Immediately, social media erupted. The live stream viewership skyrocketed past 10,000. Prestige National and Justice for Olivia began trending in Chicago, and soon nationwide. Outrage, disbelief, and boycott calls flooded the comment feeds. Unbelievable. Staff just publicly insulted their own CEO. This bank is going to face serious consequences. Somebody call the press right now. They owe us an explanation. At that moment, Bradley and Patricia stood utterly defeated, faces pale and rigid. Bradley tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Patricia looked ready to collapse, her eyes wide with horror at the collapse of her own standing. On the big screen, Regional Director Robert Harris's expression flickered as he realized the magnitude of the error. His arrogance and sternness gave way to shock. Clearing his throat, he tried to regain composure, though his voice trembled. "Dr. Bennett, this must be some unfortunate misunderstanding. I will contact the board immediately to clarify this." Olivia gave a slight, knowing smile, but it was no joyful grin. It was the smile of a woman firmly in her power, fully aware of the repercussions of the events that had just unfolded. Looking squarely at the screen, she replied in a cold but perfectly calm tone. "Mr. Harris, I don't believe you need to contact the board. They're right here in front of you. What you need to do now is consider the consequences of what's just happened." Each of Olivia's words landed like a verdict, plunging the bank into complete silence. None could deny it. A seismic turning point had occurred, one that not only gravely damaged Prestige National's reputation, but also consigned its antagonists to the brink of their careers and credibilities. Less than 10 minutes after Dr. Olivia Bennett produced her business card and CEO badge, the tense silence at Prestige National was shattered by the hurried footsteps of authority echoing from the main entrance. Every eye, still stunned, swiveled toward the trio stepping into the grand lobby. The senior leadership team, Chief of Staff Ellen Rodriguez, General Counsel Maria Sanchez, and Compliance Director James Wright, entered with austere, stern expressions, offering neither greeting nor a friendly glance. Ellen Rodriguez led the way, slender yet commanding, her sharp eyes sweeping the room before settling on Bradley and Patricia. Known for her calm crisis management, the anger in her gaze was now unmistakable. "Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Kane," Ellen intoned in a cold, unwavering voice, "explain to me immediately what is happening here, and I expect an explanation that is truly convincing." Bradley stood frozen, throat dry. He opened his mouth, but only incomprehensible sounds emerged. Patricia fared no better, her face drained of color as she looked to Ellen in panic, only to be met with a merciless stare. At that moment, Maria Sanchez, her hair neatly pulled back and bearing the air of professionalism, withdrew a file from her briefcase and began flipping through pages slowly but deliberately. Renowned for her uncompromising investigative rigor, Maria's gaze flicked toward Bradley and Patricia as if to warn that no detail of their misconduct would be overlooked. Compliance Director James Wright, solemn and composed, stepped forward to the counter where Olivia still stood. He bowed his head slightly in full respect. "Dr. Bennett, I sincerely apologize for this grave incident. I assure you we will resolve it as swiftly as possible." His voice carried across the room, sinking Bradley and Patricia deeper into fear. Bradley could no longer contain himself and stammered in desperation. "Ms. Rodriguez, we were merely following standard procedure. I had no idea she was the CEO. If I had known—" "If you had known?" Ellen cut in icily. "If you had known she was the CEO, would you still have treated her so rudely? What bank policy permits you to publicly humiliate and insult any customer, regardless of who they are?" Bradley fell silent, unable to answer the sharp question. His head dropped, hands trembling uncontrollably. Beside him, Patricia swallowed hard and mustered a feeble defense. "Miss Rodriguez, we only meant to protect the bank's interests. We did not intend to—" "Did not intend to?" Maria Sanchez interjected, her tone calm but weighty. She raised the file slightly, emphasizing her next words. "According to our records, you two deliberately applied undue pressure and created a blatantly discriminatory situation in serious violation of professional ethics and applicable law." No sooner had Maria spoken than every gaze in the room returned to Bradley and Patricia, full of heavy judgment. Sarah Brooks, still live-streaming, her eyes wide with excitement, narrated every tense moment. "Everyone, you're witnessing Prestige National's legal and senior management team handle this live. The two employees responsible for this serious act of discrimination are now facing consequences in front of thousands of viewers." The live stream audience exploded past 15,000 viewers. Comments flooded in, "Justice has finally arrived. They deserve to be punished for this. Prestige National must deal with this decisively." Ellen Rodriguez approached Olivia, her gaze filled with respect. "Dr. Bennett, I propose we convene an emergency board meeting immediately to address this serious issue at its root. And let me be clear, Prestige National will not tolerate any form of discrimination within our organization." Olivia nodded slightly, her eyes still radiating authority and resolve. She knew this battle was no longer just for herself, but for everyone who'd ever faced such injustice. One thing was certain. Those who caused this grave misconduct today would have no chance to err again. Less than an hour after the senior management team arrived, the boardroom on the top floor of Prestige National was filled with every member of the board of directors. The air in that spacious conference room was icy, an almost tangible contrast to the bank's grand exterior. All eyes, stern and authoritative, were fixed on the three figures huddled in the corner of the table: Bradley Mitchell, Patricia Kane, and Robert Harris. Bradley forced himself to sit upright, but his hands trembled visibly on the tabletop, betraying his inner panic. Patricia beside him looked ashen, her eyes wide and helpless. On the video monitor, Robert Harris fared no better, constantly wiping cold sweat from his brow, fully aware that his career fate rested in the hands of this powerful board. At the head of the table sat Chairman Thomas Caldwell, a composed man in his 60s with silvery hair and a calm demeanor. His eyes glittered with seriousness as doctor. Olivia Bennett stood and approached the large screen, ready to present. "Ladies and gentlemen," Olivia began, her voice clear, confident, and cool, each word echoing in the silent room. "What you're about to see illustrates that this was not merely an individual mistake, but a symptom of a much deeper problem within our organization." She pressed a button on the remote, and the screen sprang to life with a series of security camera clips alongside Sarah Brooks's recorded live stream. The unambiguous, vivid footage displayed every insulting gesture and derogatory remark made toward her, all laid bare before the board. Bradley swallowed hard. His heart seemed to seize as he watched himself demean Olivia. Patricia bowed her head, unable to meet anyone's gaze, and the board members all noted the cold cruelty in her actions. Robert Harris's own orders to expel Olivia played back in full. When the video ended, the room's atmosphere grew even more suffocating. Olivia placed the remote on the table and turned to face the board with grave intensity. "This was no random incident," she said. "These actions demonstrate that a deeply ingrained bias has been allowed to fester among certain individuals at Prestige National. Such prejudice not only gravely damages our bank's reputation and honor, but violates the core values we pledge to our customers and the community." Thomas Caldwell inclined his head, then fixed his gaze on Bradley and Patricia. "Mr. Mitchell, Miss Kane, I want to hear your direct explanation for what just transpired." Bradley drew a shaky breath, desperation creeping into his tone. "Mr. Chairman, I was only trying to fulfill my responsibilities. I admit I erred in failing to recognize Miss Bennett's identity, but my sole intent was to protect the bank's interests." "Protect the bank's interests?" Ellen Rodriguez, seated beside Caldwell, cut in coldly. "By publicly humiliating a customer and sparking a media and social media frenzy? Is that how you protect us?" Bradley fell silent, speechless. Patricia finally found her voice trembling. "I truly apologize. I never intended harm. I only followed the instructions given to me." Compliance Director James Wright interjected, his tone measured yet incisive. "Miss Kane, no one at this bank ever instructed you to behave in a discriminatory manner. This isn't a procedural issue. It's about your attitudes and judgments." Thomas Caldwell then turned to the video monitor, addressing Robert Harris, who sat silently, visibly shaking. "Mr. Harris, as regional manager, how do you justify your decisions and actions in that situation?" Robert Harris dabbed at his forehead, voice quavering. I acted too hastily without proper verification. I fully accept responsibility for this error." Olivia observed them all in silence, her composure underscoring her undeniable authority. She then addressed the board softly but firmly. "We must act immediately." not only to resolve this incident, but to root out the racial biases that still exist within our organization. If we don't, similar crises will inevitably recur, threatening both Prestige National's reputation and its future. No one dared contradict her. Every pair of eyes in the room agreed with her incisive assessment. Bradley, Patricia, and Robert understood that from this moment on, there would be no turning back. This meeting would not only determine their own fates, but mark a pivotal shift in Prestige National's internal policies and culture. The moment Olivia's final words fell silent, the boardroom plunged into a heavy, oppressive stillness. All eyes turned to Chairman Thomas Caldwell, who sat quietly, fingers interlaced before his chest, as though weighing a decision that would determine the bank's future. After what felt like an eternity, Caldwell slowly lifted his gaze, cold but resolute, fixing it on the three seated before him: Bradley Mitchell, Patricia Kane, and Robert Harris. Having carefully reviewed all the evidence and heard your explanations, it's clear we've witnessed the serious repercussions of your actions, Caldwell declared, his voice ringing with authority. The Prestige National Board of Directors cannot condone any behavior that so gravely undermines our bank's honor and the core values we've built over decades. Bradley's spine went cold. His heart pounded like war drums. Patricia sat beside him, eyes trembling, pale with fear as Caldwell's words echoed like a final verdict. On the screen, Robert Harris looked utterly defeated, cold sweat beading on his forehead, his eyes silently pleading for one last chance. Without hesitation, Caldwell continued, unwavering. Therefore, I announce the board's decision. Mr. Bradley Mitchell, Ms. Patricia Kane, and Mr. Robert Harris are hereby terminated from all positions and employment at Prestige National, effective immediately. His words struck like lightning. Bradley and Patricia visibly crumpled. Bradley bowed his head, breath ragged, hands shaking as he gripped the table's edge as though it were his last support. Patricia seemed unable to breathe, tears welling in her eyes, her once confident facade utterly shattered. On the screen, Harris's lips quivered. No defense could follow. Ellen Rodriguez cut in sharply, her tone firm and decisive. In addition, we will immediately launch mandatory unconscious bias training for every employee. From our top executives to new hires, no one may opt out. General Counsel Maria Sanchez nodded in agreement and added, "Furthermore, to prevent anything like this from ever happening again, we will roll out today a dedicated discrimination reporting app. It will enable customers and staff to report bias incidents instantly and directly to senior leadership." Compliance Director James Wright offered his full support. This will ensure we confront these issues head-on and reinforce Prestige National as a fair, transparent, and trustworthy institution. Bradley sat defeated, eyes fixed on the floor as though he had lost his entire career in an instant. Patricia's tears fell unabated. Harris bowed his head on the screen, unwilling to meet anyone's gaze. Throughout it all, Olivia Bennett remained standing at the head of the table, her expression grave. She understood that today's decisions were more than punishment. They were a powerful declaration and an unshakable commitment to eradicate injustice and prejudice. Caldwell then turned to Olivia, his tone, for the first time, softening with genuine respect. "Dr. Bennett, thank you for your courage and strength in confronting this critical issue. Your actions have not only protected our bank's reputation, but inspired a comprehensive reform at Prestige National toward absolute fairness." Olivia offered a slight, determined nod. She believed wholeheartedly in Prestige National's future, and she knew that today's historic decisions would mark a turning point, not just for this bank, but for the entire financial industry, on its journey to eliminate bias and discrimination forever. Less than 10 minutes after Dr. Bennett presented her business card and CEO badge, the tense silence at Prestige National was shattered by the sound of determined footsteps echoing from the main entrance. Every head, still reeling, whipped around toward the trio entering the grand lobby. The senior leadership team, Chief of Staff Ellen Rodriguez, General Counsel Maria Sanchez, and Compliance Director James Wright, stepped in with austere, no-nonsense expressions, offering neither greeting nor a friendly glance. Ellen Rodriguez led the way, slim but commanding, with razor-sharp eyes sweeping the room before settling on Bradley and Patricia. Known for her unflappable crisis management, the anger in her gaze was unmistakable. "Mr. Mitchell, Miss Kane," Ellen said in a cold, authoritative tone, "explain to me immediately what has been happening here. And your explanation had better be convincing." Bradley froze, his throat dry. He tried to respond but only managed garbled sounds. Patricia fared no better, her face drained of color as she looked to Ellen for help, only to be met with a merciless stare. At that moment, Maria Sanchez, her hair neatly bound and her demeanor all business, withdrew a file from her briefcase and began flipping through it deliberately. Renowned for her uncompromising investigative rigor, Maria's glance at Bradley and Patricia spoke volumes. No detail of their misconduct would be overlooked. Compliance Director James Wright, stern yet respectful, approached the counter where Olivia still stood and bowed slightly. "Dr. Bennett, I sincerely apologize for this grave incident. I assure you we will resolve it as swiftly as possible." His voice carried across the room, sending Bradley and Patricia deeper into panic. Bradley finally stammered in desperation. "Ms. Rodriguez, we were simply following standard procedure. I had no idea she was the CEO. Had I known—" "If you had known?" Ellen cut in icily. "If you had known she was the CEO, would you still have treated her so rudely? What bank policy permits public humiliation of any customer, regardless of who they are?" Bradley fell silent, unable to answer. His head bowed, hands trembling. Patricia tried a feeble defense. "Miss Rodriguez, we only meant to protect the bank's interests. We did not intend to—" "Did not intend to?" Maria interjected, tone measured but heavy. Raising the file slightly, she pressed on. "Our records show you deliberately applied undue pressure and created a blatantly discriminatory situation, in serious violation of both our professional ethics and applicable law." Instantly, every gaze in the room returned to Bradley and Patricia, judgment plain in their expressions. Sarah Brooks, still live-streaming, narrated breathlessly, "You're watching the legal and senior management team of Prestige National handle this live. The two employees responsible for this discriminatory act are now facing consequences before thousands of viewers." The livestream audience exploded past 15,000. Comments flooded in, "Finally, justice. They deserve punishment for this. Prestige National must take decisive action." Ellen stepped beside Olivia, respect in her eyes. "Dr. Bennett, I propose we convene an emergency board meeting immediately to address this serious issue. Let me be clear. Prestige National will not tolerate any form of discrimination in our organization." Olivia nodded, resolve shining in her gaze. She knew this fight was no longer just for herself. It was for everyone who'd ever faced injustice like this, and those responsible today would never have the chance to repeat their mistakes. As Prestige National's positive reforms made headlines nationwide, behind the scenes each individual involved, whether once at fault or caught up in the crisis, began their own profound journeys of change. Bradley Mitchell, who had once stood atop a promising career, was forced into a period of honest self-reflection. After weeks of despair and guilt, He bravely enrolled in a specialized diversity and inclusion training program, something he had previously believed didn't apply to him. The rigorous lessons gradually peeled away Bradley's unconscious biases, compelling him to confront his own deep-seated mistakes. During one session, when asked to share his experience of losing his position at Prestige National, Bradley rose and spoke with raw sincerity. "I once believed I was doing my job right by doubting anyone who seemed different from me. I was wrong. I let bias guide my actions without ever questioning them, and for that, I am truly sorry." This heartfelt confession marked a turning point. Determined to make amends, Bradley, immediately after completing the program, joined a Chicago-based charity that provides financial support to disadvantaged communities. He poured his energy into helping struggling families and marginalized neighborhoods, serving as a humble, dedicated mentor who always listened and offered practical assistance. Bradley shed his former arrogance and coldness, embracing humility and compassion so fully that even those who witnessed his fall were astonished by his transformation. Colleagues at the charity, initially skeptical of his motives, came to admire and respect him as they witnessed his genuine commitment each day. Jessica, the young teller who'd unwittingly been part of the initial prejudice, also underwent a dramatic shift. Thanks to the bank's mandatory bias awareness training, she gained a deeper understanding of her responsibility in every customer interaction. The sessions not only highlighted the consequences of misunderstandings and bias, but inspired Jessica to cultivate empathy and stronger communication skills. Her most striking change was in her customer service. Where she had once been mechanical and occasionally indifferent, Jessica now attended to every detail, put herself in the customer's shoes, and resolved issues with genuine care and dedication. Within months, she emerged as the top performer at the downtown branch, beloved and praised by clients and management alike. One day, Jessica unexpectedly encountered Dr. Olivia Bennett in the main lobby. This time, there was no awkward hesitation. Jessica approached her with heartfelt gratitude. "Dr. Bennett, I want to thank you. You taught me an invaluable lesson in empathy and responsibility. I never imagined one unintentional mistake could lead me to such positive change." Olivia looked at Jessica warmly, a soft smile reflecting her pride. "Jessica, we all make mistakes. What matters most isn't the error itself, but how we face and correct it. I'm very proud of what you've accomplished." Stories of personal transformation like Bradley's and Jessica's quickly spread through the community. News articles and TV segments highlighted how Prestige National's reforms had ripple effects far beyond its walls, inspiring other financial institutions to study its model as a best practice case in social responsibility and positive change. For her part, Olivia Bennett welcomed these developments with humility, knowing that real progress depended on people like Bradley, willing to confront their own failings, and young professionals like Jessica, eager to grow. To Olivia, the most significant success was not the improved metrics or restored reputation, but the genuine, lasting change in individuals and communities. It proved that courageous, principled decisions can transform lives, not only within one organization, but throughout society at large. As the positive transformations of individuals like Bradley Mitchell and Jessica became increasingly evident, the broader impact of Prestige National's sweeping reforms reached well beyond the bank itself, leaving a profound and lasting mark on the entire U.S. financial industry. The outstanding success in reshaping internal culture and eradicating discriminatory bias at Prestige National quickly drew special attention from leading financial institutions. Top-tier banks and respected financial conglomerates across the country began consulting Olivia Bennett, seeking her guidance on how to restructure and fortify their own equality and diversity policies. In the process, Olivia's credibility and reputation transcended that of a skilled CEO, turning her into an emblem of courage and inspired leadership. Within just a few months of the incident, Olivia was appointed to the Federal Reserve's Senior Advisory Council, a highly prestigious role that empowers her to contribute directly to national financial policy. In these council meetings, she freely shares her deep personal experiences and invaluable lessons learned from Prestige National's historic reform. At a major conference attended by America's banking executives, Olivia took the podium and spoke clearly, forcefully, and sincerely to hundreds of attendees. For too long, we've avoided confronting the biases and injustices that quietly persist within our organizations. The events at Prestige National rang an alarm bell, showing us that if we don't act boldly, the cost will be far higher than we can afford. Her remarks resonated widely in the media, elevating her to a role model admired by thousands nationwide. Leading universities, Harvard, Stanford, and others, began using Olivia Bennett's story as a case study in effectively addressing and resolving sensitive issues of bias and injustice in the workplace. Meanwhile, Prestige National's pioneering reforms were rapidly adopted by other major banks. Financial institutions recognized that transparency, fairness, and an unwavering stance against discrimination aren't just moral imperatives, but also bring tangible business benefits. Programs such as the Prestige Equality Reporting App and Advanced Bias Awareness Training became industry-wide standards, profoundly reshaping banking culture from the ground up. At the same time, the key figures from the earlier scandal, Bradley Mitchell, Patricia Kane, and Robert Harris, became cautionary examples in training sessions and industry seminars, underscoring the dire consequences of letting bias dictate one's actions. Though painful, their inclusion in these lessons offered the most vivid proof that responsible, fair conduct is non-negotiable in professional settings. Even Bradley, now forging a new path at a community-focused charity, was invited to share his personal journey at a diversity and inclusion summit. With genuine humility, he openly acknowledged his past mistakes and helped educate others, guiding them away from similar pitfalls. Under the far-reaching influence of Olivia Bennett and Prestige National's reform policies, many banks announced substantial investments in community support programs and other social initiatives, efforts that before had often been superficial or purely symbolic. New financial funds were established to back underserved communities, expand educational scholarships, and provide capital for businesses owned by people of color and women, all contributing to a sweeping industry-wide reinvigoration. Olivia Bennett was no longer just a bank CEO. She had become a respected and powerful voice for equity and inclusion in finance, routinely named among America's most impactful social leaders. Yet she remained characteristically humble, always emphasizing that the success of this reform was not her achievement alone, but the result of collective courage and unity in facing difficult truths. The influence of Olivia Bennett and the reforms at Prestige National ultimately transcended the boundaries of a single institution, changing how America's banks operate and proving that, with determination and the courage to confront hard realities, any organization can drive profoundly positive industry-wide change. 6 months after Prestige National's reforms began driving deep industry-wide change, Olivia Bennett stood at the podium of the American Bankers Association's national conference. A gentle spotlight illuminated her, casting a soft but powerful glow, symbolic of her journey from the epicenter of crisis to the leader of a movement for equity and justice in finance. The hall fell silent as Olivia began, her voice clear and heartfelt. 6 months ago, I walked into Prestige National's downtown branch not as a leader, but as someone suspected and judged solely on her appearance. What happened that day shook my career and life. and laid bare a painful truth hidden deep within our system. She paused, letting her gaze sweep the room. But beyond the hurt and disappointment, that event gave us the chance to face reality, to change, and to write a completely new chapter, one defined by fairness and equality. Behind her, slides and data came to life. Footage of Bradley Mitchell's transformation from a banker who'd made a grave mistake into a devoted volunteer supporting struggling families. Images of Jessica, once an unwitting participant in bias, now shining as the branch's top-performing teller. These stories vividly illustrated the profound reforms at the bank. Olivia continued, pride and sincerity in her tone. The journeys of Bradley, Jessica, and so many others prove that when we truthfully confront our errors and dare to challenge our unconscious biases, change is not only possible, it's unstoppable. In the back of the hall, a few attendees wiped away tears, moved by memories of loved ones who'd suffered similar biases. No one spoke, but everyone felt the power of her words. Her voice strengthened. Today, Prestige National is more than a bank. It's the emblem of a revolution we all must join. We turned crisis into opportunity, shame into valuable lessons, and above all, built a legacy of true fairness. The screens behind her displayed the widely adopted Prestige Equality app, bias awareness trainings, nationwide community programs, and other banks implementing Prestige National's model. Evidence of an undeniable wave of positive change across U.S. banking. She paused, eyes blazing with conviction. Yet our work is far from over. A legacy of equity is not achieved in months or years. It's a lifelong commitment each of us must uphold every single day. Thunderous applause erupted, lasting long after she stepped away. In a corner, Bradley Mitchell watched with gratitude, now part of this inspiring story rather than its antagonist. Patricia Kane, once weighed down by remorse, actively leads local anti-bias initiatives, and Robert Harris shares his own cautionary tale to help other organizations avoid similar mistakes. As Olivia descended the stage, attendees approached to thank her, saying her story gave them strength to confront and overcome their own biases and to spark change in their organizations and communities. Leaving the hall, she glanced back with a soft smile, knowing this wasn't just her story or the bank's. It was a story of courage, the power of change, and above all, the legacy of fairness that she and thousands of others build every day. A legacy not measured in dollars or authority, but in the profound, positive impact it leaves in the hearts of millions. A legacy that will endure, transcend boundaries, and mark the ongoing struggle against injustice in society. If this story moved you, please like and share it with friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories. Together, we can change the world, one small action at a time. Thank you for listening.